Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us for day 4 of the big read of solving the race issue in America. We have, over the last 4 days, Doc, it seems like the time goes so fast. It seems like we just started this thing.
It sure does, Doc. And remember, for the sake of time, we have our our sands of time that clock in at 15 minutes each. So at 4 turns of this, we will conclude with an hour. And it's just so much to say in such a concentrated period of time.
Yes, sir. Let me see. Let me make sure I have everything going here. Let's see. Uh-huh. Let me start this all over. Okay. All right, Doc. Here we go. Okay, good. All right, we're good here. Everything is good. All right, well, over the last few days, folks, we have covered, we started on Monday, the first day of Black History Month, and we talked about why the book was written. We looked at the prologue for the book and really gave a little background on how the political environment and some of the things that happened after the Obama presidency and that transition that took place that really made created a whole different vibration with the 2016 election. This whole idea of taking our country back really brought about the environment and the vibration to write the book. On day 2, we really set the stage. We had 2 of our young readers, Mazaray Rogers and Olivia Harris, and they read from the introduction and they talked a bit about some of the things that have been taking place in America, little factual pieces. And Olivia really recited a piece from the book called The Kidnapped African Would Not Die, which really was a testament to the resilience of African American people. And then yesterday, day 3, we were smoking. We had a student from Ariel Payne from F F M
FAMU, Florida A&M State University.
Florida A&M State University, and we had Tyler Ford, who was a former student at Dr. Rogers and a political consultant, and they laid it out. Ariel did such an incredible job that we've gotten requests for her, to share that video. All right. And so today we're at day 4,
Yes.
and we have some incredible guests today. And Doc, why don't you introduce our guests as I get us
Yes,
set up
sir.
on
Will,
Facebook so that we are rolling it live on Facebook.
will do. We are joined, everyone, by 2 distinguished readers. I'm going to introduce them in the order of their readership. We're joined by Dr. Johnny Hill, the dean of the Shaw University Divinity School, and he's of course an educator who educates others to be educators, and he's a pastor who pastors in a manner that cultivates other pastors. And Dean Johnny Hill, it's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so very kindly. I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. We're also being joined by an extraordinary author, and both of these gentlemen are authors, and that's A. Peter Bailey. When I met Mr. Bailey, he was working with C. Dolores Tucker's group, the National Council of Black Political Women, and he was the editor of their journal of great speeches that were giving the year previous to their publication. And Mr. Bailey also was a publicist with the Afro American Union, started by Malcolm X back in the day. Did I say that correctly? Welcome, Mr. Peter Bailey.
It was the Organization of Afro American Unity, OAAU.
Yes, sir. Excellent.
I was the editor of that organization's newsletter too. That was my introduction to journalism.
That's right.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a pleasure to have such history in the house. As we mentioned yesterday, we have multiple generations, and again today, we're not going to count the number of years around the earth, around the sun, but we have multiple generations represented here today as well.
Wow, Doc, you know, as we've been going through this process, one of the things that we've been finding is that the diversity of ages and of experiences. You know, when we were listening yesterday to the to Ariel, who's a
Yes.
second year political science student, she really showed a fervor and just an excitement that just got me. Wow, I was like, you know, it just rekindled my faith in our young people that man, they really have something special.
That's true. That's
And
true.
then today to have some true veterans,
Oh my goodness.
you know, on all levels. I tell you, Doc, it just knocks me out.
Yes, sir. Well, they say that we walk among giants, and certainly on this call today, and the audience as well, there are giants among us, and we celebrate you while you're here with us. We celebrate your work, and we know that you're still being productive, and we thank you for investing your time with us in the Big Read today.
All right, Doc, you know, we left off yesterday at page 22.
Yes,
Tyler
sir.
covered a nice piece. And so we're picking up today on page 22, and we call it The Solution, a Paradigm of Freedom. And you were going to share that with our audience.
Excellent. Yes, I'll begin. So finally, what is the solution? How do white and black Americans solve once and for all the issue of racism in America? First, we must realize that the problem cannot be solved on the same level of consciousness that created it in the first place. The paradigm of slavery can only be changed with a new lesson, with a new consciousness, a paradigm of freedom based on love, equality, and justice is burned indelibly into the mental, emotional, spiritual psyche of each and every American. There must be a mutual acknowledgement of each person's humanity and a total commitment to the golden rule do unto others as you would have them do unto you. White America must confess its sins against Black Americans. Each and every white person must take personal responsibility for the paradigm of slavery that was created in the past and perpetuated in the present. The spiritual problem of the slave paradigm cannot be resolved as long as white Americans continue to avoid personal responsibility by claiming they did not personally participate in the slavery process and that no one is to blame since the people who personally inflicted slavery upon Black Americans are all dead. Black Americans must acknowledge that the paradigm of slavery has impacted them on every level of their lives. They must actively search out, confront, and replace all slave mentalities and behaviors with new thoughts and behaviors consistent with being free, responsible, and self actualized human beings. Why must the paradigm of slavery be resolved? The bigger, more significant question is why must the paradigm of slavery be resolved? The paradigm of slavery must be resolved if America is to survive and thrive on a long term basis. When Abraham Lincoln said a house divided against itself cannot stand, he was referring to different positions that states were taking on the actual issue of slavery. Today, the House of America is still divided against itself. The division now is a spiritual one. A country that does not live up to its creed, its its creed is spiritually divided between the lofty God-filled representations made in the United States Constitution and the true state of affairs and consciousness that exists in reality. Spiritually, the paradigm of slavery must be resolved if America is ever to achieve true and lasting peace and joy. The kingdom of heaven. This paradigm must be resolved on a personal and individual basis, just as slavery must be was created on a personal individual basis.
Wow, Doc, that was quite revealing. Any thoughts or comments on that from our audience, from others who are listening in?
None yet. I think they're taking it all in with us.
Okay. Well, Doc, I'll tell you, that was a powerful reading. And that sort of brings us up to the point now where I think Dr. Hill is going to pick up. And Dr. Hill, maybe give a little background on Dr. Hill, Dr. Rogers.
Oh, yes, sir. So once again, Dean Johnny Hill is a Morehouse man, and he graduated from the one institution in America that concentrates on the education of Black men primarily. That's their focus. And then from Morehouse, Dean Hill, what was the name of the divinity school? No, he went on to Duke University to receive his master's of divinity, and he was a member of White Rock Baptist Church in Durham, North Carolina, which is one of the cornerstones of Black life in the state of North Carolina. And from attending Duke University, being a junior pastor there at White Rock Baptist Church, he went on to divinity school. Dean, what was the name of the divinity school you attended?
I ended up going from Duke Divinity School to Garrett Seminary, which is on the campus of Northwestern University for my PhD.
Excellent.
And then circled back and taught at Louisville Seminary and down again at Morehouse and Claflin University, and now here at Shaw.
Magnificent. And the dean, he walks in the spirit of Dr. King because he's both an activist and a pastor and a steward of souls at the church. And he's also a scholar. Could you tell us about the book you've written, Dean?
Sure. So I had the privilege of writing a book entitled The First Black President, Barack Obama, Race, Politics, and the American Dream, that was released in 2009 on the backdrop of the Obama presidency. And then I had the privilege of writing a book that was a little bit more recent entitled Prophetic Rage, a Post-Colonial Theology of Liberation, which was really a sort of a theological and philosophical work designed to advance the freedom struggle, offering a theology of liberation, almost like a political theology of justice, freedom, and human dignity.
Excellent. And so that falls in direct alignment, if you will, with the reading that he'll begin now in this work of Dr. Harris's. Dean, if you would be so kind.
Sure. Let us now go to the scriptures to get a better understanding of why America must resolve the paradigm of slavery. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and all that dwell therein. For he that founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods, who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul into vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. That is Psalms 24, 1-5. The nation of America, the United States of America, did not enslave Black Americans. America, in the determined grip of practicing slavery, did not whip, torture, rape, and maliciously kill Black Americans. Individual white Americans, most of them Christians, inflicted the pain and horror of slavery on individual Black Americans. Individual Black American women were raped, sodomized, and subjected to ungodly sexual lusts and fantasies of individual white men that would shame even the worst in ancient Babylon or Sodom and Gomorrah. We must now ask, how can white Christians today be responsible for or impacted by the sins and transgressions committed by their forefathers who created and constructed the paradigm of slavery? White Americans consistently denied personal responsibility for the paradigm of slavery, proclaiming that they did not enslave anyone. They denied personal responsibility for the practices and institution of slavery, since those who created it are long dead and buried. Let us go again to the scriptures, the writer says. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which had brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, upon the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and shewing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. This scripture, the writer says, seems to imply that if individuals commit terrible acts that demonstrate a hatred for God, then the punishment for these terrible acts can be inflicted upon future generations of these perpetrating individuals. How does one hate God? The writer says, one hates God by disobeying the commandments of God. For when Jesus was asked at Matthew 22:36, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus replied in Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40, Jesus said unto them, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is likened unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Thus, based on the words of Jesus and the principles set forth in Genesis, one demonstrates their hatred or contempt for God by treating their fellow man, their neighbor, in a manner that they themselves would not like to be treated. Wow. No man desires to be treated like a slave, and surely no white Christian man in America during the days of actual slavery before the Civil War and afterwards during the days of the de facto slavery wanted to be treated in the manner that Black Americans were treated. Frederick Douglass, in response to some white man's suggestion that slavery wasn't that bad, invited that white man to spend one day as a slave and see if his opinion would not change.
Mm, mm, mm. Wow. Dean Hill, that was, as a minister, when we were writing that, I was really looking for direction from the scripture and trying to apply the scripture to the daily experience that we were having. And I often wondered whether people interpret it that way. Any thoughts on that before I read the last section?
Well, I mean, I think that what you're suggesting is quite compelling, and that is that there is a place for personal individual responsibility, not for just simply the system of slavery. And we know that the slavery as an institution was a systemic evil. It was a structural and systemic evil that had generational consequences.
Mhm.
But what you're suggesting is, and what the author, I believe, is saying here, is that we have to also frame it within the context of individual personal responsibility and choice. That rooted in scripture is a legacy of individual personal responsibility alongside systemic evil and structural and systemic, of course, responsibility as well. So not only does um, God hold communities and nation states responsible, God also holds individuals accountable as well. And it seems, this is what I think is really compelling, is that this is really responding to those individual whites who today will say, well, they didn't have anything to do with slavery. They can try to sort of, divorce any responsibility to correct the wrongs of the past because they themselves had no quote unquote direct involvement with the institution of slavery. However, I think you couch it very well and draw on scripture very powerfully to help us understand that they have benefited from that system of slavery individually. And because they have individually benefited from a structure, an environment, a North American system that privileges white individuals over against Black individuals, that they are still complicit in that history. And that the only way to rewrite those wrongs is to actively participate as an individual in correcting the atrocities of the past, engaging in the work of justice and freedom in today's context. Very well said, and very powerful read.
Woo, Doc, I tell you, as you said it, you know, words have such power. You know, words have a vibration. And, you know, when you say words, especially you speak with such authority, when you say words, it really touches a portion of our being. I was listening to the gentleman tune my piano a couple of days ago, and I was noticing that when he hit a middle C, every C on that piano vibrated. But not only did every C vibrate, every other note vibrated to a little extent. And when we listen to words, as you were sharing the words, even though we'd written them and they were scripturally based, that just your saying of them with such power and such authority created a vibration of truth that really rings and touches a portion of your body, a portion of our spirit. And so I thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and can I ask a question here, Dr. Harris?
Yes, sir.
Ladarius raises the question, the point. He says, or he says it as a statement, and it's a question. America is suffering from karma. So a question could be, is America suffering from karma? He goes on to say, America was founded on violence. The tides are turning as we saw the attack on the U.S. Capitol. The enlightenment of Black people through knowledge will force healing or further suffering. Any responses to that statement?
Well, I mean, I don't support the concept. Like I would reject the idea of karma, because karma assumes that there isn't a level of individual agency and choice that people have to actually correct the present. So the problem with karma is that it serves, I think, it privileges those who are in power more than it does those who are oppressed, because karma suggests that you can't really change the present, that whatever happens in the past will automatically sort of yield certain consequences in the present moment, that whatever happened will come back. But what I believe the author is saying here, and I believe it bears itself out in scripture, is that we have a choice, that human beings have a choice, and that white Americans have a choice to have the courage to lean into the discomfort and the anxiety and the fear of addressing and facing and confronting the past. And by confronting that past, they have a choice and are faced with a choice on how to change the future as well, how to rewrite what could be, and how to make right the wrongs of the past. So with the insurrection that took place on January 6th, certainly it was a consequence and an embodiment of the years of, you know, white supremacy, white privilege coming to bear. But now the nation is faced with a moment of decision, right? That especially now that, you know, the Democrats have taken hold of the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, but they still don't necessarily control the courts, right? So there's still that element, but there's an opportunity that this nation is faced with to lean into the discomfort, to have the courage to rewrite the wrongs of the past. And it's going to require individuals to make those kinds of courageous choices in the polls, in their practices and behaviors that collectively make up us as a country and as a community.
Wow. You know, Doc, when you were sharing that, when I was looking at the events of January 6th, you know, it seemed that that event, that really rebellion against the government, it seemed to me that that would be something that everybody could agree was wrong, you know. And as I'm watching the excuses and the avoidance and the explanation, one of the amazing things is that whatever you give your attention to, whatever you focus on grows. And so just as in the aftermath of Floyd, of Floyd's
George
killing.
Floyd.
Yes, in the aftermath of that, we could have focused on the possibility of really addressing the evil of racism right there. Say, well, this is a perfect opportunity to look at this, or you could choose to look away and look at, you might say, ancillary things. You know, let's look at the burning of a building as a big problem as opposed to the systemic racism. I think, Mr. Bailey, were you raising your hand, Peter?
No, I was someone was trying to call me, and I was trying to do whatever I had to do to get.
Okay, yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I was just saying, I think that's a powerful point. And you know, the Biden administration was the first administration to actually publicly acknowledge the problem of white supremacy and the terrorism of some of these white supremacist organizations that has gone unchecked for previous administrations. They probably were aware of them. I mean, without a doubt, you know, in terms of the intelligence agencies, and knew this was a threat. And we've seen different things from the Timothy McVeigh bombing back in the 90s and other incidences that have taken place. But it's rooted in the Ku Klux Klan, right? That same element of disruptive, aggressive, violent, visceral hatred of Black people, and also profound distrust of the government that has, because of its compliance to the Constitution, stepped in at times to protect Black bodies. That element continues to be strong today and shows up. So one of the things I would love to see is more conversation about how what took place in January 6th is rooted in that long history of terrorism, of white supremacy and terrorism rooted in slavery, but even up through the Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizens Councils and the other groups that continue to be pervasive up until the present moment that we haven't addressed. We haven't named them for what they are,
yes,
which are, you know, pseudo, terrorist, domestic terrorist organizations.
yes. And you know, Doc, I know spiritually, I think Abraham Lincoln, when he was saying a house divided against itself cannot stand. And that if there was a destruction of America, it would not be from without, it would be from within, through the contradiction of these ideas, the thought that we can say all men are created equal in our written word and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, but when we can live a being that's completely contrary to that, a consciousness that's completely contrary to that. And so we have some serious spiritual healing to go forth. Yes, Doc, you're giving me the time. Go right
It's
ahead.
holding up the time. It's time for us to read the next portion, if you would be so kind, Dr. Harris. The filthiness of slavery.
Yes, that's a perfect place for it. The filthiness of slavery. Let us look again to the scripture to get an understanding of a generation of white Christian Americans who self-righteously deny any culpability for the paradigm of slavery. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth and the needy from among men. Proverbs 30th chapter, the 12th through the 14th verses. In America today, at the beginning of the 21st century, there's a generation of white Christians that are pure in their own eyes and yet not washed from their filthiness. The filthiness that afflicts white America is the filthiness of slavery and the paradigm of slavery.
We're going to allow the dean to make another statement. We know he has a meeting he has to go to. Dean, would you care to respond to that particular piece, or to say anything else before you depart from us today?
I think that was just a compelling read, because I think what the author is doing is really unpacking for us the depth of darkness and sin
Mm.
and perversion of human dignity that the slave system, the paradigm of slavery, as the author describes, truly entails. That, and I think that's a very important point. I applaud the author for really bringing this to our consciousness, especially at a time when there's so much revisionist history going on. There are so many attempts at trying to rewrite the darkness and the atrocity of slavery, and trying to suggest, well, it wasn't so bad. There are even these teachings out there that suggest, oh, well, maybe enslaved Africans actually enjoyed it in some cases, and it wasn't as bad as it may seem. But what I think the author really is pushing us to do, and thank you very much, Dr. Harris, for doing this, is to really challenge the readers to understand that this was not like any other kind of slave environment in history. This was unique. It was extraordinary, and it was beyond any kind of form of human dignity or sanity. It was insanity. It was not just filthy. It was egregious assaults on human life and human dignity.
Mm.
Thank you for that.
And I think that for us today as educators, and for me as a minister and a seminarian educator, we have to continue to place this concern in front of students, the church, and the broader community, so that we would remember, lest we forget, and we would continue to go forward in ways that bring forth justice and freedom. Thank you so much for the privilege of sharing, and I bid you well in your continued reading. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dean. Woo.
And now, Brother Peter Bailey is going to take us even higher. Mr. Bailey, if you would be so kind as to read there on page 27 where it begins, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Okay. When we follow the trend of current events in America since the year 2000 and earlier, we see a determined assault on the poor, sick, mentally ill, and needy. Americans of every variety, poor Americans, Black and white, find themselves getting poorer while jobs are being exported to other countries. Illegal immigrants are taking jobs at lower pay, and welfare safety nets disappear. In America today, those in power, predominantly white Christian men, who control the government, are truly lofty in their own eyes.
Mm.
Their eyelids are lifted up to their God, the unholy Trinity: profit, power, and pleasure. The American government is controlled by the President of the United States and the United States House of Representatives and the United States House of Representatives and the United States Supreme Court. Presently, there are 100 United States senators, 435 United States representatives, 39 Supreme Court justices, and 1 president and 1 vice president. In the history of America from 1776 to 2019, a period of 243 years, there has been 1 African-American president, Barack Obama, and no African-American vice president. There have been 2 Black American Supreme Court justices, Thurgood Marshall and Clarence Thomas, in 243 years. 10 Black United States senators in 42 years. There have only been 10 Black senators. They are Hiram R. Reeves, 1870, 1880, 1871. Blanche K. Bruce, 1875, 1881. Edward W. Brooke, 1967, 1979. Carol Moseley Braun, 1993, 1999. Barack Obama, 2005, 2008. Roland Burris, 2009, 2010. Tim Scott, 2013, incumbent. Mo Cowan, 2013, 2013. Cory Booker, 2013, incumbent. Kamala Harris, 2017, incumbent. In 2019, there are 52 Black Americans the United States House of Representatives out of a total of 435 representatives. When you follow the current events in America, as highlighted by the treatment of Black Americans during Hurricane Katrina, police brutality, and the silence of many white Americans in response to racist comments of President Tucker, you will see that many of the white Christians in power appear to care little about the plight of poor Black Americans. And yet, these same poor Black Americans are the end product and resulting creation of the paradigm of slavery, the paradigm of slavery created and maintained by white Christian Americans. As the Bible predicts and reality confirms, the white Christians in power in America today are doing everything in their power to, quote, devour the poor from off the earth and the needy from among men, end of quote. The message is clear. By portraying the poor as lazy, shiftless Black Americans who are out to get something for nothing, white Christians feel no remorse in cutting welfare and health care benefits for the poor, while fulfilling their own pockets with the corrupt fruits of outrageous corporate profits. Those who control the government cry out like Chicken Little that the sky is falling. They say there's no money, no resources to feed the hungry, to educate the children, to provide decent housing, to rehabilitate the prisoners, to guarantee America's promise of, of those inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet there is always money and resources to give big business a subsidy, build a $200 million bridge to nowhere, to fight an unsuccessful war in a distant land, to give the breaks to people who don't need the money, who have all the money they could reasonably need in 10 lifetimes.
Wow. You know, Peter, you've done a lot in economics and talking about, you know, your writings. I follow you, a lot of your writings, and that I think you may have some interesting comments there.
Yeah, but what I believe today is that we as a people, you know, Black folks, we spend much too much of our time on electoral politics and almost totally ignore economics. My belief is that you will never, 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 never have political power without economic power. You may have a limited degree of political influence, but you will never have political power without economic power. I feel so strongly about this, is though I support the whole question of reparations, I support it thoroughly. I believe they owe us every penny, but I am so afraid that if someone, let's say in 2021, gave us reparations, by the end of 2022, all of that money would be in the hand of other ethnic, racial, and religious groups. We would have given it all away. Instead of building institutions, building businesses, building schools, you know, building things in our communities so that we will be not so dependent economically on other people. And I talk about this. I get a lot of flack for my position in this sometimes, but I believe that if we more effectively use our collective economic resources, brother, to me, a Black individuals making money is nothing new. Even back through the days of enslavement, there were individual slaves who made a few dollars. So Black individuals making money is nothing new. And in the early 1900s, our ancestors pooled their resources and built things. But man, for the last, let's say 70, 80 years, we give all of our money to everybody else. That's what integration became. We integrated the money, but we didn't integrate much of anything else. And that has been a major hindrance to us developing ourselves, both as individuals and as a group of people. And I strongly believe that until we start doing more and becoming more alert and aware and conscious of the absolute importance of economics in this money-driven society, we will be forever at the bottom of the pile.
Wow. And that's
I go
powerful.
one last thing, one last quick thing.
Go ahead, my friend.
The reason that this country today is in the position that it is in economically, it is that it is the only country in the entire world that had almost 300 years of free labor. In anything you build a business, your biggest expense is labor. So if you had free labor for almost 300 years, you ought to be the richest country in the world. Nobody else had that. Nobody.
Wow. Now that's a powerful thought, Doc. I mean, that's a powerful, Peter, I tell you, when you think about that, labor costs are a major percentage of anything you do in business.
Always.
Always. And
It's your biggest expense.
it's your biggest expense. And when you look at how we are exporting jobs, it's to cut back on labor costs. So we eliminate slavery, free labor, but then we take the job, the work that slaves were doing, that people were doing, and send it outside the country. So you might not get it free, but you get it for pennies on the dollar. That's really what exporting the jobs is really all about, is creating really, you might say, a new paradigm of slavery.
Yeah.
The closest thing you can get to having slaves is to get, if not free labor, at least labor, wholesale labor, bargain basement price.
But
Wow.
you know how to make that, clearer, brother?
Yes, sir.
Back in the days of enslavement, the biggest products in international trade was sugar, tobacco, and cotton.
Mm.
Try to imagine today, one of the biggest ones today is oil.
Mhm.
Just imagine that if those folks who have control those oil wells had all those people who are working, you get that oil up and out on it, did not have to pay.
Mm.
The biggest thing in international trade was sugar, tobacco, and cotton. And the people who had that in this country didn't have to pay nobody. They had to pay people just enough money to be able to eat and stay alive.
Yes.
And we're still seeing that today. We're seeing, for example, from the continent of Africa, the cocoa bean growers that are supplying the basis for chocolates to the world, and they're being paid pennies on a dollar. They're not being paid zero, but they're being paid very close to zero. And when we look at the tobacco coming out of Nicaragua, cigars are a big thing. And cigars are being sold. Cohiba, I think, sells something like 20 million cigars per annum. And then there are all these other tobacco companies that are still selling tobacco globally. And you see people primarily of color that are fielding tobacco, that are rolling the tobacco. But again, they're being paid something, although not as worse as during slavery, where it was total free labor.
Brother,
Right.
in 2009, the Washington Post newspaper did an 8-page supplement on Africa. I went to a Pan-African conference in Ghana in 2018,
Mhm.
and I read the headline of that supplement to Black people from 40 different countries. The headline of that supplement was Africa on the agenda. I say, you notice, it didn't say Africa's agenda. It
Right.
said Africa on the agenda.
Mhm.
The subhead was Africa, the key to global economic growth.
Hmm.
Now, if you are the key to global economic growth, Africa should be the richest folks on earth.
That's
Wow.
right. That's
But
right.
that's the new paradigm of slavery. You know, Peter, there was a story on the island of Madagascar off the coast of Africa. And in that island, down in the bowels of the earth, is some natural resource that is the heart of every cell phone on the planet. Some type of silicone. It's
Titanium? Is it titanium?
not titanium, but it's one of those valuable minerals. But out of that country, Madagascar, that country supplies like 80% of whatever this chip is that every cell phone needs. And they treat the people so badly that you have whole families. You have to get this chip, you have to go down into the bowels of the earth and almost bring it out by hand. and you have whole families with kids who get no education, with people who just make enough to keep going back into the mines the next day. It's a new slavery. Wow.
It's really, we people of African descent in North America and people of African descent on the continent had better wake up economically. We better start putting as much focus, in fact, more focus on developing our economic cohesiveness as we do talking about electoral politics.
Well, you said something very powerful, Peter. You said if you don't have some financial power, then political power is almost an illusion.
Yeah.
And so
I'll be willing to bet you, brother, and I have never checked this out, that not a black person in American Congress get most of their campaign money from the black community. I bet you not one.
I think I'll agree with you on that.
And the person who gives out the campaign money gets the most attention.
Yes.
So two things.
We think politics is just about voting. Politics is way more than voting.
Totally agree. Two things. One is mica, Dr. Harris, is that mineral.
Mica, that's it.
Mica, that's in airplanes, it's in cell phones, etc. Another thing on this economic issue was, at one point, when African Americans pooled their resources together for burial of others, then became mutual aid societies, then became these insurance companies. And insurance companies have been economic drivers because you get, millions of people paying $15 a month for policies. So that's $15 million a month you're taking in. You're able to build off of that in Durham, and found Mechanics and Farmers Bank. And I think Dr. Harris pointed out to me that, barbers would get paid daily in cash. Teachers get paid once a month in the form of a check, but barbers and mechanics were constantly handling money, and farmers as well. And so you had North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, Atlanta Life Insurance Company, you had the Alabama Life Insurance Company, you had the Golden Mutual out in San Francisco, and all of these insurance companies had cash available for backing banks, loaning business owners money to start their businesses. We know NCM Capital came directly from the excess capital of North Carolina Mutual that Maceo Sloan invested at $1.2 billion based off of excess, input. But now these insurance companies are no longer around. Yeah. So Black folks are still buying life insurance, health insurance, car insurance, but we're not buying them from companies that have our interest first in what to do with all this excess capital that they're generating.
Brother, I lived in Richmond for about 8 years, and 2nd Street in Richmond at one time, you had a Black-owned hotel. The Maggie Lena Walker became one of the first women in America, definitely the first Black woman to found a bank. Maggie Lena Walker. You had Black insurance companies, operating. And then soon, that's why I say, we got to take another look at Brown versus Board. Because Brown versus Board started telling us that all Black things were inherently inferior. At least that's the way many people interpret it. That if it was all Black, it was inherently inferior. Those schools at that time were not inferior because they were Black. They were inferior because of neglect by the state and the city. But it became interpreted if it's all Black. So all those Black folks in Richmond had all this going on now. And in Richmond, there's a street called Broad Street. One side of the street was the Black business sector, the other side was the white business sector. The minute that, so quote unquote integration came, they all ran across the street to the white folks.
Yes.
And despite the fact you had a great Black-owned hotel, a Black-owned bank, your Black-owned insurance companies, right? It's amazing. And we have Brown versus Board, to me, has turned out from a psychological perspective to have been have hurt us.
Peter, that's a powerful thought, man, because when we look at integration was truly interpreted that way. I grew up, I was in the segregated schools, and integration was interpreted, the Black schools were closed down.
Inherently inferior.
And the Black kids were bused to white schools. And so that set up another paradigm. And
That's
when we
right.
look at the insurance, we actually have one of the heirs of North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company. Sandra Spalding Hughes is one of our participants today. And her ancestors were founders of North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company. And when we look today, it's virtually, I know at one point they had nearly 500,000 customers.
Yes. Yes.
And today it's virtually, I think, basically in reorganization.
Paganina Walker's Bank in Richmond was one of the thriving banks in Richmond because Black people were putting their money in that Black-owned bank.
Yes.
They were staying in the Black-owned hotel. I grew up in Tuskegee, Alabama. In the middle of my sophomore year in high school, my father was in the military. He got stationed in Germany. And I went to high school, my last year of school in Nuremberg, Germany, Nuremberg American High School. Now, at that time, I had never gone to school with a white kid. But when I got over there, I had been in all Black schools my entire life. But when I got over there, not only was I not behind my white peers academically, I was ahead of 95% of them.
Mm.
So I knew that all Black schools were not inherently inferior. They were inferior because of the policies of the state. But we interpreted it as being, if it's all Black, then it became Black schools, then Black neighborhood. If you live in the Black neighborhood, brother, and every house in that neighborhood costs $500,000, if it's all Black, they call it a ghetto.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If it's all Black, every house in that neighborhood costs $1 million. But if it's an all Black neighborhood, it's a ghetto.
It's still a ghetto.
And just one more revisit of the notion of insurance companies. We were asked by Pastilla Anglin, what are the names of the insurance companies that we can support? And I think in modern times, there's actually only one, National Standard Abstract, which is a title insurance agency founded by Osei Ruby in 2015 that manages $1 billion. So there's still a need for the development of Black insurance companies. There are many Black insurance agents who work with other insurance companies like A Good Neighbor. We see them advertising in our community, but in terms of controlling the reins of power, we need a new generation to actually emerge and create these insurance companies and intergenerational relationships to establish these. And I just want to push back a little bit to you, Mr. Bailey, and say that you're correct. We are not where we should be at all. We've fallen off. We do see people in Atlanta. We see a young man, I think his last name is Morris, Jay Morris, and he's put together this Tulsa real estate fund, and he's asking people to pool their resources to collectively buy back the block. There's a gentleman in the Houston 5th Ward who's actually a developer who's helping to redevelop the 5th Ward of Houston, Texas. His name escapes me right now. There's a group of young men. They started a private club in Atlanta for Black folks called The Gathering Spot. They've gone on to open up one of these gathering spots in Washington, D.C. and in Chicago, and business deals are being done. So I acknowledge what you're saying, that individually, there are individuals who are wealthy and we've fallen off, but there are efforts underway, particularly among young people, to do collective economic activity to liberate the community.
And brother, I agree with you. Don't get me wrong. I know that they are in pockets all over this country. There are Black people doing very serious, positive things, but they're not the ones who get all of the attention.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They don't get the attention in the press and the newspapers, even in the Black. They don't get the attention. But
Right.
I am in complete agreement. I think there are groups of Black people all over this country who are doing very positive, productive things,
Yes.
and both individually and collectively. But we don't hear about them.
Right. And
That's
so
why I would love for somebody one day to call together a conference called a conference of what I call a strengths conference, where Black people would come together and we would say, like I always laugh and say, we would get together, let's say for a 2-day conference. And the first day of the conference, the moderator would say, we live in a white supremacist society. And then I would say, I don't want to hear that no more for the rest of this conference. All the rest of I want to hear for this conference, the rest of the time we're here, is how we can build our economic strengths, our political strengths, our cultural strengths, our education strengths, our health strengths, our legal strengths, our technological strengths, and our self-defense strengths. That's all we're going to talk about. We ain't going to talk about nothing else.
Well, we're going to definitely be a part of that Doc. You know, I know we're right at 1 o'clock. We had one question on, we're broadcasting on, and thank you so much, Peter, for that insight. We're broadcasting right now also on Instagram. And the young person asked, he said, I am among the young people that want to build economically, and I will bring my peers if we have that conference call. So Peter, you have stimulated something. This young man, he says, I will bring my peers if you have that conference call. So we have a
conference that focuses on our strengths.
Yes. Well, we have a couple of assignments now. You know, all of this has grown so much stuff. Number one, I think Patrice's question about Black insurance companies, Doc, I think we need to research that and see which ones are still viable.
Yes.
I think we've all sort of let it slide off. It's been sliding so fast, it's hard to keep up. And then two, to think about that the young people who are doing stuff, there's so many young people, as this young person on Instagram is saying, you know, that a podcasting app, a whole new era of technology that we have to look at. And so we need to start thinking about that. Peter, thank you so much for that conference idea.
Real quick. The conference will be called Identifying, Analyzing, and Documenting Black Strengths and Building on Them.
Good, we got it. Identifying, analyzing, and building on Black strengths.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Dr. Rogers, you're right at the top of the hour. You want to kind of wrap us up? Because I tell you, Peter, you got me so excited. And the young folks on Instagram, I work for Reverend Ike. When you got real excited, you took up a collection. So you got me so excited, I'm ready to take up a collection. And I want to thank all of our listeners. You know, everybody stayed here. Ladarius, Miriam, Patricia, Jean. I mean, we have a stellar group here. Dawn, Digna, Amanda, Sylvia. I hope I haven't missed anybody, but we have many others on the line today, but I just see those names. That's all I can see on my screen. But I want to thank you for joining us. We'll be here tomorrow, and you're gonna put us to work, Peter. We're gonna find out those companies that are viable, and we're gonna look at how we might be able to really put a conference together like that. Back to you, Dr. Rogers, to wrap us up.
Thank you for an awesome conversation. When you stand on such broad shoulders as Peter Bailey and Dean Johnny Hill, and even yourself, Dr. Herbert Harris, it's easy to look good. They say if you see a turtle at the top of a flagpole, you know it did not get there by itself. And so to say what we have yet to do is to say what we will take on as our next task. Thank you, everyone. We're going to conclude on time. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow with 2 dynamic additional readers and conversation. Have a wonderful day. And thank you again, Mr. Peter Bailey, Dr. Herbert Harris, Dean Johnny Hill. Everyone have a great day.
A Peter Bailey. I have to different.
Alfonso Peter Bailey.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. We got
Peter Bailey.
And let me tell you, anybody who wants to reach out to us, send us an email, info@solvingtheraceissue.com. info@solvingtheraceissue.com. We'd love to plug you in. Anyone who is on Instagram who's not logged into our conference, go to www.thebigread.net. That's www.thebigread.net. And we'll be doing this Monday through Friday, all through Black History Month. All right,
Thank
folks, know this, that the best is yet to come.